And I think that's another thing that people need to understand is that, like, if you keep, like, bullying people, even more, they're not going to feel this attachment to their culture. Because I feel like, why would, it's like, yeah, it's just like, how can you feel like you want to be a part of something when they're already judging you from the get-go, you know? What's up, you guys, and welcome back to school. But don't worry, everything is cool. I'm your host, Julyssa, and of course, I am here with the boys, Steve and Brandon. Say what's up, you guys.
What's up?
And we have a special guest today. We have Angelie.
Hey.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
How you feeling?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm like super nervous right now.
It's okay.
It's a pleasure to be on here.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's a pleasure to have you, really.
Yeah.
For those of us in the audience who don't know a lot about you, why don't you go ahead and educate them on what it is that you do?
So, if you guys don't know, I have my own Instagram page that I do that specifies in all reels containing cannabis related content, but at the same time, it's always me kind of doing like a spin-off version of Malcolm in the Middle theme song that relates to life problems and anything relevancy along the lines, and making it my own freestyle episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because I noticed that a lot of your content is, well, a lot of people who see it, obviously it's the you smoking, but it's more than that. It's like life advice and kind of self-improvement. Where does that come from? Like, where did that kind of content stem from?
Like, do you want the whole backstory?
Yes, yeah, the whole backstory.
Okay, so when it was, I believe, 2023, I ended up living alone in my car, and it was really, really hard. But at the same time, I didn't have no support from family. I didn't have no support from friends at the time. And I was also living in the Valley. I don't know if you guys know where Silmar is.
Yeah.
So when I was living there, I decided to make videos, but more life advice videos to myself to kind of look back on. And the only way that helped me really, I guess, express myself a little bit more was just cannabis. And as corny as it sounds, it's like a lot of people kind of downplay the use of it and don't really use it for their own benefit.
Yeah.
So when I did that, I remember I hit like 3.4 million on TikTok, and I wasn't sure why. It was just me giving like advice. So then after that, I remember one of my close friends told me, move it to Instagram. And I was like, okay. And after that, reel after reel after reel, it just started gaining momentum.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
If you don't mind me asking, I know you just mentioned that you were living in your car for a while, and I commend you because that's a survivalist story, and I think you've come a long way. What's that like? Because that sounds like a really rough, origin to your content creation.
To be honest, it was hard finding a place to shower. It was, I had to go to the gym, and I remember I used to work at Starbucks, and I would wake up early morning. I think, I'm trying to remember. So I would either pick like a little alley to go sleep in my car, and then wake up early morning, go to the gym, hit the gym, take a shower, and then before or after, I would film my episode, and then get ready for work, and then that was my day. Or if there was never a time where I got to live in my car, I would always be grateful for any friend like letting me stay with them in the meantime.
Is there anything that you feel like you appreciate more from that experience? Like not having a place that you can stay at? Like, were there things that beforehand, like maybe you just didn't feel the significance of until, it got taken away?
I think what I learned from everything is just like really trusting yourself to really get out of that whole space that you have. Because honestly, if it wasn't for me to turn on the camera, I don't think I would have opened any opportunities for myself.
Really?
Yeah.
So,
What? How does that feel? Like, I mean, because I had no idea that was like your origin, right? And so I guess for me, like hearing you start from such a small beginning to now, like I've seen your content even before we even talked, and I was always a big fan. And I think that's an amazing story, like to start from such a humble beginning, and then you blow up on Instagram and TikTok. And I'm sure there's a lot of hard work that went into that. How does that feel to just suddenly, like, I know it sounds like it's overnight, but I know you put in a lot of work and effort into that. How does that feel to just trust yourself and then all of a sudden, wow, look where I'm at?
It's hard. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that just see me as like a pothead.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they don't really think of it as in like, oh, she's not smart, she's not this, she's not that. But not a lot of people really initiate a question like that. Like, where did it all start? But I guess you could say, like, me barely having like a support group really had to humble myself. I feel like when you get to rock bottom, when you feel like nobody's there for you, not even your family, no friends, like, it's like that moment where you look at your phone and you're like scrolling through all the contacts and you're like, I can't call that person. And like the only person that you have is yourself. So I feel like what I gained from that is like the amount of love that I have for me.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Drew.
No, I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say,
Sorry.
I feel like that's just very beautiful, and I think especially, you know, as a woman, I feel like that's also very brave of what you kind of did and what you kind of initiated for yourself. And I think to me that really, like, I guess touches me in the, like, that I'm very happy for you and the turnout that you've had, and like, again, with your content, like, we've seen it, and like what you do and what you say is also very inspiring. And I just want to give you your flowers in that, because I feel
Yeah.
like you really deserve
you.
the hard work that you've been putting in, and especially like the stuff that you went through, you know?
Definitely. Like, that's such a profound story. Like,
Yeah.
that's such a really interesting and profound story. Like, I think it's a very powerful story. But I guess there's, like, as you're talking, there's so many questions I want to ask you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I guess
Really,
for me, like, what I really admire in like the brief moments that I'm getting to know you is that you seem very kind and optimistic.
Yeah.
And me personally, I feel like if I was in that situation, or if maybe other people were in that situation, I would find it very hard to remain optimistic. And I feel like your content is so optimistic. Like, it's about advice, it's you versus the world, it's things are going to be okay. How did you do that? Like, I feel like that's amazing. That's what I'm curious about. Like, how did you find that optimism and like to just keep going? Was it like a need? Was it like, well, I just have to, this is my way of surviving? Or like, where did that come from, would you say?
I think anybody that really like endures anything, like, I'm not gonna say traumatic, but like anything hard from like their own upbringing, regardless if it's like your childhood or trauma that you have, I think you owe it to yourself. Like, whoever's watching, you owe it to yourself. Whatever you've gone through, everybody deserves their flowers, the way that I put it. And whenever I get any comments that are like belittling me, telling me like, hey, why are you gonna listen to this person smoking in their car? But not a lot of people know that I used to live in my car. That was the only place where I had my privacy. Or even till this day, I don't let any friend in my car sometimes, because it's just like, me da pena,
Yeah.
you know? And to find that optimism every day, I think I go by that quote that's like, there's always beauty in the struggle. Ew, I don't want to cry.
It's okay.
I just think if there wasn't any struggle in my life, I don't think I would be able to make anything happen. You know, I feel like it's not me yapping now. Like, same thing for artists, whether it's art, music, or any creativity that you guys have, like the topics that you guys talk about, like something bad has to happen for you guys to get talking.
Yeah.
And to make art happen. That's all I really can say.
Yeah. I guess I kind of interpret that as like, there's a bit of gratitude when horrible things happen, and because they come with lessons, right? Even if it isn't something as serious as living in your car, even when you fell at something, right? Like, let's say it was a relationship, or it was a project, you know, you fell, you get better. The only way to get better is to fail, is the way that I see it. So I completely commend you. That's really cool. But I want to touch on that because I think I'm a habitual smoker too. And so I've heard a lot of criticism over the years, obviously. It's like it makes you lazy, or you are lazy, or anybody who smokes it is lazy. And I wonder, like, for somebody whose whole page is kind of dedicated to that, how do you kind of manage all those negative comments, or do they ever affect you?
I think the only comments that affect me is when people say that you can't manage cannabis with your own life. Because the only thing is that, like, you can't depend on anything. You know, you can't depend on a drug. You can't depend on a friend. You can't depend on a lot of things. But when it gets to a point where people see me and they're like, you smoke every day, you don't... I think it's funny because when I post stories or when I post any videos, people think that it's on that exact day. Like, you don't know if I took that a month ago. You don't know if I took it last week.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people believe, like, in tolerance breaks. A lot of people are more like, oh, she probably does this 24/7. But that's the thing, though. Like, I always listen to myself to not listen to the comments. So I think that's the best thing I can tell you guys.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I like haven't probably read the comment section in like 2 years. I just kind of, I mean, I think that the person whose opinion is the most valuable is your own opinion.
Yeah.
Like, and I think you should protect yourself at all times. Because it's also not healthy to constantly be hearing, because not to get like on a weird tangent, but I think that because we work in social media, there's this perspective that you gain that you're constantly being perceived and kind of like critiqued, and people come up with opinions about you that have never met you. And I think that it's unhealthy to kind of play into it, because eventually you stop living life for yourself and you start living life based on what other people want you to be. And like I think that that's like already like a failed play. Like, you're never gonna satisfy everybody, but you can satisfy yourself, and you can be happy with yourself.
Yeah, I also feel like, I guess with comments, and again, like, we've been used to a whole bunch of things. I always feel with what people sometimes say about us, I'm like, but I know what the truth is. Like, I know the stuff about myself and who I am. And I feel like what you're saying is just to kind of, you know, make me mad. And I feel like, yeah, maybe in the moment, but I'm just like, but I know what's real, and I know what myself, and I know you guys. And I'm like, I know what's real in that. And I think always reminding myself of, like, I'm presenting myself as authentic as I can. And like, if you don't believe that, then that's cool. Like, I'm not trying to convince you, but I still know who I am, and I know who that person is. And I feel like for me, I think that's what I've always thought of with like all that kind of stuff is like, I think I know who I am, and I'm not gonna change who I am because you think something else. Kind of like what you said.
I mean, even beyond social media, just in real life, like, I mean, fuck what anybody else has to say about you. You know yourself better than anybody else does. If you truly believe that this is like, if somebody thinks that I'm this person who is a bad person, they don't know anything about me, but I know me, and I know that I wake up every day and I try to be at the best version of myself, right? So I think that that's like kind of the motivation of, even if you're not a social media influencer, you are a person, and the person who you should always take care of is yourself. Because at the end of the day, more than anybody else, more than a sibling, more than a family member, the person you spend the most time with is going to be yourself. Yeah. So you should learn to love yourself. So this is a love yourself message. But moving on a little bit, before the show, we were kind of talking about identity a little bit, and you were telling me that you were half Mexican, half Peruvian, and you said that you felt like a little disconnected from the culture growing up, and I wanted to hear a little bit more of that story. Have you kind of like made amends with that, or are you trying to constantly fix that, or what is it?
I get called a no sabo kid.
Yeah.
But
and are you a proud no sabo kid?
I speak Spanglish. I feel like nowadays everybody speaks Spanglish to their parents. But like growing up, a lot of people are always asking me, where's her parents? Where's her close friends? Why doesn't she post anything, or like her close life? But the only thing is that like, one, my parents don't care that I smoke because I don't have them. Like they were never present. So I lived with my dad's family, which were Mexican, and my grandma and my grandpa, they were only, how can I say this? They didn't have that emotional support. I don't know if you guys can relate to that. But they were always on top of like, what's that saying called that they always say? They're always like, oh, you have a shelter, you have clothes, you have food, you have water. I think you'll be fine. And it was always me, like an only child. So it was only 3 adults living there and then me by myself. And it was always like solo. Like, how can I say it? They were just yelling the whole time. It was always like a demand, like, oh, go do this in Spanish. But it was never like me trying to have like a conversation with them in Spanish. Like, I can understand, like, let's say you guys were to talk to me in Spanish. Yeah. I'll understand what you're saying. But like me trying to tell you something, I'm going to have choppy Spanish trying to speak back to you.
I get you.
And I only have, like, the basic Spanish words down. And, like, you can understand what I'm trying to say, but, like, does it sound funny? Yeah, because I've been always bullied by it from my family. And then I've tried my best to kind of put in effort to get to know my family and know their roots and where do I come from, but it's only, like, a slim chance that, like, no.
Yeah, no, I mean, I relate to that in a lot of ways. I think that my Spanish is probably better than people think it is, because I think I get called a no sabo kid just because I think my English is good enough, right? It's good enough. Every now and then I slip a little bit, like can't pronounce some words, but I relate to it because I had a grandma who she passed away, and one of my biggest regrets was always that like I never really had a full conversation with her, where I could ask her about like where my family comes from and like you know, the history and I guess her perspective too on a lot of family like lore, if you know what I mean. Like so I mean I relate to that in a lot of ways where I feel like my parents think I'm an Osabo kid, which hurts the most. And I guess I get it because I mean they're from Mexico, but I tell them that I understand it almost like perfectly. I feel like I could watch like a whole movie documentary in Spanish, but yeah, I wouldn't be able to then like, el documentero, you know, like I wouldn't be able to say it all back in Spanish, you know. So I relate to that.
No, yeah, I get what you mean. Well, more in the sense that like you said you're Peruvian and Mexican. I'm Mexican and then my mom's Chinese. So
that's a dope mix.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, thank you. So I can relate in the sense of like, I always adjacent it to this where I always have, you ever heard the saying, jack of all trades, a master of none, where, yes, there's a lot of cultural background with me, right? Like my mother's Chinese ancestry and then my father's Mexican ancestry, right? But I think there's, at least from the community, I think community wise, I've always felt like there's a bit of like, nah, you're not really Chinese. You're not really Mexican, and whatever, you know, that is what it is. But I think for me, it's always, I think part of culture is community. And if the community is constantly trying to be like setting all these boundaries, I think it makes it hard. But I think for me personally, what I've kind of come to understand is like, if you're of a mixed nationality or of a mixed background, I think the older generations or maybe the communities that are all about purity or whatever, I think they're missing out on the creation of a new cultural identity, because I think as the world evolves, there's going to be tons of mixed people from different backgrounds and different nationalities and stuff like that. So that's how I rationalize it for myself, is that, well, I guess I'm on the forefront of the more mixed backgrounds and stuff. But I can understand what it's like to kind of be like, I don't really know her.
The Duolingo generation, bro. I'm telling you, I've been looking into it.
Yeah.
I gotta get the Spanish. Is it gonna get better by itself, bro? So that's what I've been looking into. But
it happens.
Oh, for sure.
I wasn't sure if you guys wanted me to talk.
No.
No, I just feel like when you don't really know your background, and I feel bad for all the kids that they are no sabo kids, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just something that, you know, you maybe weren't taught, maybe you weren't raised in that household. But I will say that, like, me not knowing my background, it made me excited, but it made me sad. It made me sad just because I didn't know who I was and where did I come from, like, what are my roots. And even though most of my friends, you know, they all have their Mexican families and, like, they tell me stuff, or and then they're like, oh, but can you relate to this or this? I don't know what you're talking about. And then when it comes down to Peruvian side, I didn't know anything of my mom. But at the same time, it's still my identity that I want to learn. Like, I haven't been to Mexico. I haven't been to Peru. I'm super excited to go. Like, I want to travel. So I feel like this is a message to even you too. Like,
Thank
you know, there's more time to figure out more of
for
your
sure.
background, you know?
sure.
But that's the most exciting part. So I don't think no Sabo kids should feel that bad.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I also feel for them because I'm
Yeah,
like,
dude.
because I'm just like, I think people don't understand that there's, I guess, different struggles in it, because there's some who, you know, some parents generally didn't want to show their kids because they wanted them to fully assimilate to America, you know.
Mhm.
And I think there's other ones where it's just like, you know, the disconnect between your family. Like, a lot of people had rough childhoods where it's like they couldn't learn.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's the one thing that I guess frustrates me sometimes, is that people don't have that understanding. Like,
Yeah.
people don't have that sort of like sympathy towards them, where it's like you can't blame them like for not doing that. Like, there's just different circumstances that people are in. I personally feel like for like for Steve, like, I remember for him it was like super hard because people would make fun of him a
Bro,
lot.
like, give me a fucking break, bro.
Like, we would
Genuinely.
go to Mexico, because we would go to Mexico all the time with like my family. I kind of grew up, like, my first language was Spanish, like, and I was in like the remedial English because of that, because my parents signed me up that my first language was Spanish, and like all we talk here is Spanish in the household. With my parents, it's all just Spanish, because, you know, my mom specifically can only understand Spanish. She's gotten better through the years, but I think we've always just been used to that. But for Stevie, it was always like such a struggle. Like, people would make fun of him when he would say like Spanish words. And I guess, you know, I was young. I never understood that was like the no sabo term. Like that was
they
a
were
whole,
causing trauma.
yeah, they were causing that sort of trauma with him. But I feel like for him, it was just, he was the young one, you know, like he was more into like going
Just,
out, doing all the like
American cultural
stuff
Yeah.
and all that. So it was just like, to him, it was just, that just happened.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
it wasn't that like we made him that way, or like we didn't want him to learn. It was just like, and then it more discouraged him to learn Spanish, because he's like, well, if you guys are gonna make fun of me, then why should I learn, you know? And I think that's another thing that people need to understand, is that like, if you keep like bullying people, even more, they're not gonna feel this attachment to their culture.
Yeah.
Because I feel
Yeah,
like,
it's like
why
what you
would
were saying,
it's
right?
like, yeah, it's just like, how can you feel like you want to be a part of something when they're already judging you from the get go?
Yeah,
you know.
it builds like at least for me, I won't generalize. Like, when I was younger, I feel like for me it was like, it would create like a sense of resentment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not like that I would hate people, but just more like
I hate this
oh no, but just more like, well, if you're not gonna like whatever, then like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of that group. If you guys are just
Mhm.
gonna be, like you said, if you guys are just gonna be mean to me
Yeah.
or like make fun of me, like whatever, like I don't care. I don't even care. You know, it was like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I got bullied, but it's okay. I
He's learning now.
took it on the chin. Yeah, I'm telling
Yeah.
you, Duolingo is gonna know my
Yeah.
name.
Well, it's also crazy considering like the way society be acting sometimes
Yeah.
about like how it's like, well, why can't you just learn English and why can't you just
Yeah.
learn Spanish? It's
Mhm.
like, one language is hard enough for a lot of people,
Yeah.
because
Real.
English is one of the hardest languages to learn.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it doesn't make sense because it's so pulled from a ton of other languages, right? But to like strive for perfection of two languages, I think that's difficult.
Yeah.
Like, all
Yeah, like hot take. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, like hot take, but I feel like most Mexican American kids are no sabos. Like, I think like the people who think that they're not, they're actually way too overconfident. I think if you actually went to Mexico and met with somebody who speaks Mexican Spanish, you would see that your Spanish is actually not as proficient as you think.
Yeah.
That's a hot take. I'm pretty sure people would be pissed off to hear that.
Not me being scared to go visit Mexico now.
No, you'll be fine. It'll be fine for you. The one thing that I always remember though is that because I was starting to get, you know, assimilated into like American school, I did feel like sometimes I would start losing like my Spanish. So what I used to do is that's when I started listening to Spanish music. Like, there was a whole entire era where all I would listen to was Spanish music, and I would only watch novelas with my mom with the subtitles. And so I would read, and every single time I saw a word that I didn't understand, I would ask her. I was like, what does that mean? And that's how I kind of learned a little more than Stevie, because I feel like I started just being like, well, I feel like I still want to learn more Spanish while I'm still going to American school. Like, I still want to keep my Spanish. So that's what I started doing. And then I completely lost it even more when I went off to college because I didn't have anybody like to talk to in Spanish. And now that's how I struggle and stutter now.
Also, I feel like this is my tinfoil hat, like putting on
conspiracy time.
I think no. Well, I think
you said
that.
tinfoil.
Well, I was just playing.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I
go
think
ahead.
that sometimes when it comes to like Spanish or maybe other language, I think it's kind of like a bit of propaganda. Like I personally always felt like there's people, mostly like white people, or that are trying to set the bar impossible for you to be like, you get what I mean, to make you feel like
more like us.
Assimilated or like some type of way, because that's how I feel about it, you know. But that's just
you're right, bro. It's in the water.
You kind of remind me of like the Selena scene where they're in the truck and they're talking about being Mexican American, and they're like, we gotta be more Mexican than the Mexicans.
More American than the American.
But sometimes, like going back to what you said, it does discourage you. Like there's been moments where I tell myself, like, I've been getting comments and it's always, make an episode in Spanish. I am so hesitant. I pretend I don't see those comments. Because it's like I never felt Mexican enough to like talk and feel confident. Like, even though it sounds maybe sloppy or like choppy, but it's just that feeling. But you know, it's fine. Duolingo will come in handy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And you have done some of your content in like when you do the kind of subtitles, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes do them in Spanish.
Because sometimes actually, I didn't even know that some of my audience, like some of them are from Mexico, some of them are from Brazil. I don't know. But most of them, they were like, can you put Spanish subtitles, please? Like a year ago. And I'm like, yeah, sure, if you guys really want to. And then they started interacting like that. But now they're asking for the no sabo kid.
It's
That's
about
cool.
that time.
Yeah. Oh,
no, you.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, I know you mentioned that you're not like super connected to either, and I guess I also wanted to add that I feel like if you're a bit of a mixed background, something people don't talk about is sometimes those backgrounds can be racist to each other. You know what I mean?
They can have beef.
And, like they can have beef, like you know what I mean? And that's I don't know. I'm not trying to presume for you, but I'm just saying in my instance, you know, not necessarily family, but like. You know, I would say that those communities can say some very offensive things about each other. And for me, that's what I would say is that I would struggle with because I'm like, well, you're shit talking me, kind of, you know what I mean? And I don't know, it's kind of strange because it's like at the same time, they're telling you you're not enough, but they're telling you that this part of you is also like stained or like, what's the word?
Evil.
I wouldn't say evil, just more like
gross.
Yeah,
Gross,
exactly.
yeah.
Because I remember one time, this person will go unnamed, but I remember one time I was like a kid, maybe like 11, something like that, old enough to understand what was happening, but not old enough to really be like, hey, don't say that, you know? And I remember I was having this conversation with an adult, and they were talking about Chinese people, and which I was sharing my background with this adult. And I was saying like, oh, you know, like my grandma's Chinese, and like, you know, every now and again she'll show me stuff. And this person who was of Mexican background, she was saying that, oh, those Chinese people are a disgusting race. And I remember being like, what? And she was like, oh, but not you though. Thank God you're part Mexican. Because she was, and then I remember being like, damn, like what? You know, stuff like that. So I remember as a kid hearing that and being like, really? Like people think that? Like, but because there's certain like areas of like the community that are shut off from me, I don't know. It's just a strange like position to be in. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what I was gonna like say that I think is also challenging to make it relate, because then you're hearing voices be like, no, don't connect to that side. Like act like you don't have that side. Or like in school when people would be like, you're Chinese, and then they'd make like obscene gestures and stuff like that. And I'd be like, oh, really? Maybe I shouldn't connect with that, like what you're saying. You know what I mean? So I think that's a part of being mixed that people don't talk. At least I haven't heard about.
Like kind of being ashamed on like the other side of what you have.
A little bit, but also being told like, I would say the community be like, this is your way in, is to not accept that side. You know what I mean? To be like, oh, if you're Mexican, you're Mexican. Don't even bring up the Chinese part. You should just tell people you're Mexican. You know what I mean? And I remember as a kid, I'd be like, oh, really? Is that what people would say? Thankfully, I never went down that road. But I think that's a reality of being of a mixed descent, you know?
Yeah. I did
yeah.
not know that.
What do you mean?
Like that's like the sort of
Dynamic.
the conflict that people
Oh,
try to
for
have
sure,
you with
for
like
sure.
your own self is that like because you're from two different backgrounds, they're like, no,
Yeah.
don't accept that part. Like be fully.
But it makes sense. I mean, not that it's right. I just mean like it makes sense
I
why
mean, it
people
makes
would
sense,
say that.
but I'm just
Oh,
like
for
I
sure.
wasn't aware of
For
that.
sure.
That was a
and
thing.
so I think for me, I'd be like, well, some people tend to have this very obscene and gross reaction to when you say that you're also this. So let me just not bring that part up
yeah.
because I don't know. I think as a kid, when you hear someone say that, like an adult, it's kind of, what's the word? Like disturbing a little bit. Because I've always felt that kids are like very good at reading the room. So when I was a kid and you could see somebody have like this sense of like malice towards like this particular part of you, it's kind of like, whoa there, bud, you know, like stuff like that. And then, yeah, just what I was saying. I think it's a piece of being of a mixed descent,
Yeah.
but not to go on a tangent.
I guess that's another interesting thing is that like, I guess where it kind of comes from, where people don't want to grow out of their own cultures, you know, like I just think that's an interesting thing of like, why don't people want to do that? Like, what is it that I don't know. That was just a question that I had.
Okay.
I'm not asking you directly, but I'm just saying
The world
like,
at the
the
sky.
world. I'm asking people now.
Yeah.
of like where does that come from? I know that it might come from just like, you know, like all the history of like, you know, the whole, especially like Mexico being like, you know, colonialism and all that. And like I get that part, but I'm just like, I guess it's just so deep in trauma that it's just like people really don't want to, I guess, move out of that.
Well, I'm not a psychologist, but I've always felt that people are like the way they interact with you is always a reflection of themselves. So I've always felt that if somebody is shaming you for your cultural background, it's because they have some sort of insecurity about theirs. You know what I mean? It's that expression of like, some people can only feel tall if they put you to your knees. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like in some way people would be like, I don't feel super Mexican. So here's somebody who biologically isn't super Mexican. So like, let me
pick at him.
Let me pick at him. Or like, here's somebody who doesn't even speak Spanish. At least I speak Spanish. You know, I think that's where that comes from a little bit, which sucks, you know, hurt people, but that's my best guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I guess moving on a little bit more, because I know your content does relate around cannabis and stuff.
I was actually going to touch up
Oh,
on
no,
it.
go ahead. Then go ahead.
I did have my first, I had my first job at Food for Less and 1700 West 6th Street. Exactly.
So if he or she still fucking works there.
But letting you guys know, so it was like in the middle of downtown LA, right? Kind of close to Skid Row. So there was any Central American, Mexicans, anybody, any culture, albino, it doesn't matter. So when I used to work there, I remember it was lunchtime, and there was a bunch of coworkers and señoras. They were very, very, a little bit older. Yeah. And they were all talking about like, oh, de donde eres, this and that, right? Okay, so me being, 17, I was just minding my business, gonna go eat. I sit in the break room, and they're all talking, and then they look at me, and they're like, ¿Y tú? And I'm like, what? And then they're like, ¿Dónde eres? And I'm like, oh, Mexicana y Peruana. And then they're like, oh, no eres salvadoreña? And obviously, I remember when my grandma told me that she doesn't like Salvies. Me, personally, I never understood the beef between Mexican and Salvadorans.
Yeah, me neither.
I mess with anybody. You're good. But when that happened, I even told my grandma, and then she's like, I don't know why they would like pick at you like that. That's weird. So like they outcasted me just because I was Mexican and Peruvian. They're like, oh, you're not Salvadorian like us. And I was like, oh, my bad. Like, but there's been times where I have felt ashamed to kind of be like, okay, well, do I support more Peruvian or like Mexican? But I definitely get you.
No, I understand that. Like, I think based on, at least when I was a kid, based on what I felt was the general demographic of the area that I was in, like let's say if I was in school and I was a little kid and most of the kids in the class were of Mexican background, I would just say, oh, I'm just Mexican. Because you don't want to deal with like Because
The
like you said,
questions.
well, because then people are like, what? Like, and it's like, bro, I don't want to explain. Like, you know,
It's crazy now because as an adult, I feel like every time I've been in the room when you tell people that you're half Chinese, half Mexican, they're always like, "What? That's so fucking cool."
yeah, and I don't mind that part because I understand. Like, I'm not, but it's more like, I don't know. Like you said, I really like how you put it. It's like, sorry, like my fault. Like it's not like
For existing.
like you know, like it's not like I can just turn it down or something like that. So I
Mhm.
would just leave parts out or
I'm
just be
telling
like,
you, the Salvi ladies are going crazy.
Oh, for
I was
sure.
like, all right, I guess.
for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was always surprised. Maybe you feel this way. I was always surprised at how they could always tell. I was always surprised. Like every room that I was in that was predominantly Mexican, every time they'd be like, "Pareces chino." And
Yeah.
I'd be like, how did you know? Like, genuinely, how did you know? Like, because maybe I look it, some people say, some people don't. Or if I've been in a room with predominantly Asian people, they'd be like, yo, bro, you look like kind of Mexican. Are you Mexican? I'd be like, how did you know? Like, how do you pick that out? That was just not a gripe, but I would just be like, how would people have that, like,
It's the Mexican radar, dude.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
that's sixth sense of, like, bro,
That's
how do you,
six cents.
like, detecting Mexicans or whatever. You know?
There was this era of Brandon's life where he shaved his head, and I remember that's when you looked your most like peak Mexican. You look so Mexican. I remember you just had like the shaved head, the cholo,
Yeah, and then one
like
time I had
fashion
I had
sense.
blonde hair and I would wear I still wear glasses, but I would wear them more regularly. And that was when everybody was like, "Oh, are you
Yeah.
Korean or something?"
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah,
It was
but-
the Korean look for
Yeah.
sure.
but
You guys
whatever.
want to know? I've heard from like people who are Central American, like where the beef comes from, because most Central Americans, or Latin America, like Salvadorians, Guatemalans, and other Latinos have beef with Mexicans. I've heard the apparent explanation as to where it comes from. So there's two versions. There's the version of why Mexicans say that other nationalities have beef with us. It's that Mexicans think that they're better than the other Latinos, and then the oh, she made a face. Do you agree? That's the most common one. The second one that I've heard was from a Guatemalan, and they told me that it comes from most people who speak Spanish and are Latino growing up, especially here in the States. They'll speak Spanish, and most people will respond with, "Oh, you're Mexican," and so it's actually, it has like a term, a professional term. It's called homogenized Latino identity, which means that in the United States, the most famous, I guess you could say, the most common Latino identity is Mexican.
Yeah.
So most people will see Central American and just assume their identity, and it feels very disheartening because that's not who they are and that's not their nationality, and it feels like they're being belittled.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the resentment and the beef comes from. Just like a fun fact.
Yeah, I always kind of got that, especially with like, you know, everything going on. Everybody's like, oh, Mexicans, but I'm like, there's more than just Mexicans. Like, there's a whole bunch of other nationalities out there that like isn't just Mexican.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, and I do feel for them, because I'm like, I feel like it takes away from learning about them and their culture. Like, especially when it's like Latino heritage, and all the Latino heritage is just centered around Mexican culture.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing about what the background is about, you know, Guatemalans or Salvadorians. And like, I feel for them. Like, me being a Mexican American, I'm like, I feel like we should embrace a lot more than just that, because I just feel like it's, I don't know, I feel so bad for them, which is like understandable why they're resentful. I understand. Like, I get it, you know. And like, I don't know. It's
And
just like sad.
I guess speaking on the other one though, of that Mexicans think that they're better than all other like Latinos and stuff, I will say, and I can say this because I am full-blooded Mexican. I will say that I think Mexicans are very prideful, and I think that it can come off as arrogant, especially when like you meet people who are of mixed nationalities. I mean, that's literally what you're speaking on, so it's not a surprise.
I feel like there's also a lot to it, because I feel Mexico is very, in a way, rich, you know, and I think that's why they're also seen as like,
it's big. It's a big country.
Yeah,
too.
they're like, oh, I'm way bigger than everybody else, and I also feel like it just comes from like the colonization, you know. Like, I feel like
Supremacy, you mean?
because,
Well,
yeah,
I remember we talked about this a little bit, where that happens to a lot of communities. communities where you said it's homogenized, like identity crisis.
Yeah,
I
I
forget.
think
There's
so.
another term for it.
Yeah.
Where but it's intentionally done because they want to dishearten the smaller communities, right? It happens to the Asian communities, where everybody's assumed either Chinese or something, but there's tons of diverse Asian countries, but it happens a lot, so I can understand. I don't think you should take it out on the people themselves, I don't think that's cool. Like, I think you should be kind to your fellow man, but I think that is where it comes from.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever understood when people get offended by like the wrong race, because I remember asking certain senoras at the store when I used to work there, like, oh, like, are you Salvadorian? They're like, no, soy Mexicana. And I'm like, okay, there is no reason to be that offended by that.
Okay, attitude.
But I mean, I get you.
For sure. It's like, but you can say like 6 different things for me though, right? Like, you're Filipino, right? And I'm like, no, but it's okay.
No.
like I understand I look different, like,
Like, people make mistakes.
But
it's
God
okay.
forbid, I say, hey, you're from Guadalajara. No, Jalisco.
Just even the wrong statement.
Yeah.
No, real. But moving on a little bit, I wanted to ask you, because your content is like around cannabis and stuff. This is just more of a funny question. Have you ever had like bad trips on weed? Because I think your content kind of gives the perspective of, you smoke weed and you get deep thought and like all positive.
You ponder.
Yeah, but have you ever like been like?
Have I ever tweaked out?
Yeah.
Yes. I'll tell you guys my first story time. Okay, so I was in 9th grade. I was 14 years old, and mind you, I think it was Valentine's Day. And
Tweaks Central.
And I used to be this like very innocent looking, like, I mean, I still do, but like I guess you could say I was the innocent one from the group, from my whole class. And I remember the principal was doing backpack checks, and I remember a homegirl of mine that I used to have, she was telling me when she used to sell in her bag, she used to sell like pens, edibles, cards, whatever, right? So then she looked at me, she's like, hey, do you mind stuffing everything in your bag? They're least likely to check you. And I was like, I don't know, like, I might get in trouble. But what did I do? I did it anyway. So they never checked me. I was like, okay, cool. So then after school, I was like, hey, can you come and get your stuff out of my bag? Like, I really don't want it. And I was like very against cannabis. Like, I thought it was like devil's lettuce or something.
Yeah.
So after that, I remember I felt something like squishy at the bottom, and it was a brownie. And I asked my homegirl, because we're waiting where my grandpa was going to pick me up after school. And she looks at me, she's like, so what are you going to do with it? And I was like, I don't know. Like, should I eat it? I'm kind of scared. And I think it was like 500 milligrams.
Whoa.
And
Jesus.
Both of us look at each other, so we both break half of it, and we both ate it. And we looked at each other, we're like, okay, well, let me know how it goes. I was like, okay. So then I go in my grandpa's car. He picks me up. He's like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just hungry. And I go home, and mind you, I didn't have a good relationship with food in middle school. So my grandma knows, like, this girl does not eat. So when I go home, I remember she made camarón diabla, and then she made arroz rojo. And then I ate 3 bowls of the rice. And she looked at me and she's like, ¿Tú qué tienes? And I was like, nothing. I think I'm just tired. So then I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, I have never ate like that in my life. So then I go lay down, turn on SpongeBob. I'm about to like take a nap. And then I heard banging on the door. And my grandma was like, pack your bags. Your dad's going to come pick you up today. And I was like, no. So I started like texting, and I'm like freaking out. And I'm like, I don't know when this is going to hit. I don't know. So I keep looking, and then it says, drink milk to make your high go away. And I was like, okay, let me go get the gallon of milk. I'm getting the gallon of milk, and I'm so faded that I was going to put it in the pantry. And my grandpa looks at me, and he's like, ¿Tú qué haces? And I'm like, nothing. So I go to the fridge, and then I run upstairs next door, because that's where my tias used to live. And I ratted myself out because I was just too scared.
Yeah.
And she looks at me, she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm high. She's like, what? And I'm like, no, like, I'm high, dude. And then she's like, oh my God, what the fuck? So she made me sit down on the couch. And then I heard some chanclas up the stairs. And I knew it was my grandma. And then she looks at me, and she knows. and she just starts smacking the shit out of my head. And I just start laughing because I couldn't feel anything. And she just looked at me. She's like, "Ay, cabrona." And then I went to the toilet. I was just puking until my dad came. And mind you, he was gonna get, the belt. And my grandma stopped and was like, no, she can't feel anything. It's not worth it. And I'm just right there, like, laying down. And after that day, never again. I don't think I tried weed until I was, like, 19, early 20s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it scared me.
Yeah,
I just didn't know what to
yeah.
do. Plus, I was 14, so it was, like, I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, you took way too much. Did you throw up because... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, at our school, we had the search dog, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a sniffer dog. And he would, well, because I guess.
Damn, what school did you go to?
But that was after, like, they got caught, no?
Yeah, right? Remember? Well, because there was at least in my class, there was a couple kids who would do that and try to, I guess, maybe put it in other people's bags. So that's when they'd be like, leave your bags in the class. And then the dog would come in and sniff for the
They're like, throw them in the back. And
I forgot. I completely forgot. I swear to God. I remember one time I was in class and this one kid said something. And he was like, trust, bro, they're not going to catch me. And I was like, the dog is coming though. Like, there's no way you can fool him. He got away with it. To this day, I'm like, how did you fool the dog?
Bro,
I don't
he
know.
said trust, bro. Trust the
He
process.
put it in like food or something, and it was like,
Maybe.
no, see, your dog just wanted my sandwich.
Yeah.
You know? I don't know, but
Did you throw up because like you were like feeling it too strongly, or did your grandma make you throw up?
All I remember was I was actually singing on the toilet.
You were singing?
Like, I was singing Because I Got High by Afrojack. And next thing you know, I was like, and I wasn't sure if it was because of the rice, because I ate too much, or maybe because I was feeling everything dizzy. I don't know. But at the same time, I just couldn't handle it.
Rice, milk, and an edible, I think that'll make you throw up.
I guess what I was going to ask you too is, I guess regarding like the cannabis content and stuff, do you have like different takes or different like what do you think about how people use cannabis now? Or is it something you kind of just steer clear of? Or is it just more like to each their own? Or do you have like an opinion in terms of like, I feel like the way people use cannabis is a little...
I think it's like 50-50 on my little channel, because there's people on the side that are like, oh, take a fatter hit, take a fatter dab. And I'm just like, dude, I'm not a tweaker. Like, chill. But it's at the same time, like I said, tolerance breaks. A lot of people don't take that seriously. Like, I do go to the gym, and sometimes people are like, doesn't that interfere with your workout? It's like, okay, but the thing is that you don't know anybody online to kind of dictate how they're using their cannabis. Yeah. But I think as long as you're using it very mindfully and informing yourself on what it is, because like I said, at 14, I knew it wasn't for me. And later on down the line, I'm like, maybe I could try it again, and not an edible. I still to this day do not like edibles. But
they'll grow on you.
As for a joint or like anything like that, I feel like a lot of people don't take into consideration how much consumption they do. Like the whole wake and bake thing. I mean, it's cool sometimes, but like when you're using it to a point where like you're depending on it, I think that's too much.
Yeah, I definitely think it can be abused, because I mean, like I said, I smoke a lot too, and I have a lot of people in my life who smoke a lot, and I think that there's definitely different ways that people have relationships with weed, and I think it should never it should only ever be an addition, never a subtraction to your life. I feel like if you feel like you're losing out on either life or if your health is getting bad, then I think that you should probably rethink how you kind of go about it.
For sure. I also think like, I don't have a problem with it at all or whatever, like to each their own. But
my old smoking partner retired now.
I don't anymore. I think for me, my opinion on it is, I think anything on the planet, there's no such thing as like, I think you can abuse anything or overdo anything. And I think when it comes to weed, I've always felt like people have the attitude that this is the one exception that can't be abused. Like, I feel like I always hear people be like, it's like medicine, bro, or like, people use it for glaucoma. It's all net positive,
It's a
plant. And I think for sure, like, it can be a net positive. Like, I 100% agree. I think, like you said, if you're informed or whatever your life is like, I have no place to judge anybody, right? But I think to say that like there's no negatives, I can never go wrong, this and that, I'm like, well, I feel like you're kind of tripping, bro. Because you could say that about anything, you know? Like you could work out too much, you know? Some people work out till it really starts to hurt them, you know? You could drink too much water, you know? There's anything.
It's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
Water gets toxic when
water gets toxic when you drink way too much, you know? So
I just find it funny how like there's a lot of people that go out almost every night drinking alcohol.
Oh, for sure.
And they don't say anything about weed and being bad or anything like that, because it's like, I don't know how to describe it. I got put down more in my family being a smoker than a drinker, but at the same time, it's like killing your liver, bro. Like, I mean, what else can I tell you about that?
It's always the people, it's like we said last time, he who has a glass house shouldn't throw stones. Like, it's always the drinkers who be like, like, bro, look at you. You know what are you talking about? Not
even the drinkers. I think it's funny. It's like weirdly like a Mexican thing where like they'll drink all day, all night, get super fucked up, blacked out every fucking week. But then you take out one joint and it's like you fucking took out meth.
Yeah.
It's like you took out like fucking coke and started snoring in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, for reals, bro. Like, God forbid I just get a little high, dude. And then at least like I've never met somebody who got high and got into a car crash or hurt somebody else, but I've met people who drank and became the fucking worst version of themselves ever.
Yeah.
Because I think it is nuanced. Like I do think that you can abuse weed, but sometimes I feel like people treat weed as if it's either on the same level or worse than consuming alcohol. And I feel like I just heavily disagree. I don't think it's on the same level. I think that you can harm yourself physically with weed, like through smoking a lot, or like, you know, there's pesticides in pens sometimes, or there's pesticides in weed in general. But I think the alcohol has the effect to not only affect you, but the people around you. You know, and maybe it's a hot take. Maybe I'm coping because I like smoking.
Well, I mean, you can die from over too much alcohol, right?
Yeah.
Alcohol
you can't
poisoning.
OD on weed.
You would need to have like a concentrated like injection of weed or something like that. But I've never heard of anybody dying specifically because of the weed. Maybe they did something, but not because they took too much. You know what I mean?
You drink too much, you might literally die. You smoke too much, you just probably eat too much and get a tummy ache.
Yeah,
I've definitely like ate way too much.
Because when you're high, you don't feel like doing anything. Like you're just there calm. You're gonna want to munch on like some candy or I don't know. Like you're just very laid back. But when it comes down to drinking, I can't handle alcohol for the life of me. But when it comes down to like a joint or anything like that, I mean, why not?
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, because I remember somebody was saying on the internet that was funny. It was like, if my two uncles smoked a joint, they'd probably just like laugh and get the munchies and watch a movie. But if my two uncles drank, they'd probably be fist fighting by the end of the night.
Yeah.
Like alcohol makes you aggressive sometimes. I've seen that in so many people.
Yeah.
I don't even know.
You just also makes people get too much confidence and then end up saying or doing way too much.
Friendships, relationships.
Meantime, have you ever gotten too high and gotten super shy and self-conscious and just been quiet and sat in the corner?
Every time I order at any fast food place, I get very shy. I'm always looking down and I can't really say anything, and I have to ask like my friend, like, can you order for me?
I'm always like, fuck, they can tell.
You just
they know I'm high in here.
When I worked at the movie theater, I could always tell when people were super fucking faded before the movie.
I love going to the movies, and I feel like they knew too.
Yeah, they know. But you know what? I was always cool because like as a weed smoker, I was like, nah, I feel. Because I remember one time one guy came up and he was like, can I get sorry, dude. And I'm like, you're good, bro. You're good. He was like, he couldn't think for the life of him what the fuck he wanted. It all was looking good. He was looking up there, his eyes all glazed and shit.
Yeah.
I was like, I know exactly the vibe, bro. Me too.
I remember one time I went to a smoke shop to buy a gift for my dad because he likes cigars. But this smoke shop also had weed and like CBD. And I remember usually I get ID'd. And the guy behind the counter, you could tell he was high out of his mind. Like eyes were bloodshot red, and he was like, what do you want, bro?" And I was like, "Can I just get the cigars?" And he was like, "Okay." And then I was like, "Do you need my ID?" And he was like, "I already charged you, bro. I don't care." I was like, "All right, yeah."
It'd be like that. But see, it's all silly shit.
It is all
but if he was drunk, you'd be like, "Damn,
You'd
that's
probably
fucked
be
up."
passed out,
Yeah, that's fucked up, dude.
I could have been a cop though. He didn't ID me.
Yeah,
Nah,
like
Could have been a cop.
I remember you speaking on edibles. I remember my first edible story was so fucking bad. I don't know how much, but I definitely did way too many milligrams. We shared like do you know like the candy strips that are like covered in like
The little sour belts.
sugars? Yeah. I was like maybe like shit. I don't even know how old I was. I think I was like in high school still, which I don't condone. Wait till you're 21. But I remember we shared like half of the bag, and my fucking homie who's like 6 foot, like 200 pounds, like basically double my size. And he's like, yeah, bro, you'll be fine. Like, who smokes all the time? Takes everyone's like, you'll be fine, bro. Just take half of it. I'm like, all right, for sure, for sure. I literally started hallucinating. I remember I saw him as like the PS2 Polygon from fucking Grand Theft Auto. I remember like we got in an Uber and looking outside the Uber and just seeing a fog. Pretty sure there was no fog. But like every now and then I like recognize something in my neighborhood and it'd be like this building coming out of the fog. And then once the Uber kept moving, it would go back into the fog. Just completely fucking hallucinating. And then same thing.
How old were you?
I want to say I was maybe like 17, if I'm remembering right. So I was older, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter.
That is my one hot take, though, about weed. I do think kids are getting introduced to it a little too young.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think I got introduced to it too young.
I think you should be an adult, like 21, 25. I know I might sound like a stickler, like a lame
Old head, you
like
mean?
a lame uncle.
An
No,
uncle?
Yeah,
you're just
but-
being very, very self-aware of
Yeah,
it.
like I just think as a kid, it's like I think you're too young. Like I think like your brain is still developing and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and you might give yourself like a traumatic experience. That
Yeah.
come on, man, don't give yourself like.
I also feel like a lot of people are getting into like the e-cigarette thing,
yeah,
like
vapes.
like vapes.
What is it? What are they? A geek bar?
Oh, Elf Bar.
Oh, geek
Like the
elf bar?
I
puff
think
bar?
both.
Yeah, the one that
All
no,
three.
No. Yeah, I've seen the one that has the digital like. That's a geek bar, right?
I know some of them have like
Hilarious.
games on them.
Hilarious name.
Smoking
though.
a computer at that.
Yeah.
The fumes of the computer.
I didn't start smoking until I was in college, honestly.
Yeah, you were.
I
good.
think that's the way to go.
I was
You
a
were a
late
good kid.
bloomer.
I think
I was a good kid.
I
I
think
was-
that's
You were a good
I
kid.
wouldn't
I was a
say
good
you're a
kid.
late bloomer. I'd say you're a mature bloomer. You know, I think that's
right
what
on the
you-
money.
Yeah, because I feel like I don't know. I just feel like at a certain age, you're just too young to handle that. You know?
Yeah.
I feel like adding those chemicals to your brain
Mhm.
when you're growing is just not good for
Yeah.
you. You know.
I just feel like, I guess going back to kind of what I said off is like how I said a coworker said that he started smoking when he was like 9 or 10. And I think from there, I think that really like messed him up. Because from there, he sounded like he said that he smokes every single day. And I was just like, I feel like, especially when you're young like that, and I think when you experience, like for her, it was good that she was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But for other kids, they're like, no, I want to keep doing this because it was a pretty cool experience,
Yeah.
you know? And I think for me, I guess for me, my parents really embedded in me of like, don't do drugs, don't drink until you're 21, especially drinking. Like drugs, never. They were like, you better never do that.
Yeah.
But like drinking, they're always like, no, you have to wait. Even like when we were in Mexico and the age was like 18, they're like, you're from America, it's
Yeah.
21.
I think.
And so like they wouldn't let us do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I think in part the way drugs and alcohol are taught needs to change a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole like just don't do it is not enough. I think it probably should be like, well, if you're gonna
Do
it-
them, but do them later.
No, I just feel like yeah, maybe, or just be like, if you're gonna do them, just know like I don't
Mhm.
know. You know?
How would you tell your
I
kids?
don't know.
I have no idea. dude.
Especially you being you who was you used
well,
to
because
be
that's
a
that.
smoker.
Well, because that's what I think about is like, part of me feels like,
Bro, just
How are
make
you
me a
gonna-
villain.
how are you gonna talk and be like, well, you did it once? It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, but that doesn't mean it was smart.
Bro, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, make me a villain. Be like, yeah, but your Uncle Steve fucking forced me.
Well, I think for me, the way I would see it is my parents were they never really talked to me about weed, but they talked to me about alcohol, and they were never like uptight about it. They would be like, you want a sip? Not like to encourage me, but just
Yeah.
kind of like joking. Because you know what,
Mm.
when like you taste it as a kid, you're like, "Bleh."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think because they always had this like, it's not this demon in the. I was never curious about it. I was never like wondering about it. So I never drank, and to this day I don't really drink.
yeah.
So I think maybe something like that where it's like, this is what it's like. Like, don't do that. You know what I mean? I think if you make something super like taboo or other, I think it just inspires curiosity. I don't think it ever really
Sure.
makes people afraid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 Nice. Well said, guys.
But that's why I know my
PSA.
tolerance with everything.
Yeah.
PSA, guys.
Just,
PSA.
just wait till you're in college or something, bro.
Yeah,
Like,
wait
you know.
until you're it's a lot of fun. I have to say, it's a lot of fun in college.
But you didn't wait, bro.
Huh?
But you didn't wait.
Whose fault is that?
That's crazy.
Literally
You
just
were
said-
a grown man. You could have said no.
He was not a grown
I was
man.
a child.
He couldn't even vote.
Yeah. He literally just said make him the villain.
Yeah.
but
I
just kidding.
gave him his first
Yeah.
experience.
But,
But you had fun.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
You had fun.
Did
We just didn't. You just had a lot of dry throat for sure. You did.
Pause.
Do you remember that?
But
Bruh.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Moving
what I
on.
would say.
We also brought topics for today's podcast.
Who wants to go first?
I guess should I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's just if you guys haven't heard in the news, America is not getting rid of, but instead of just having the green card, we're gonna have the gold card, where Trump says that as long as you pay $5 million, you get a fast way. What's the word? Fast tracks you
a fast track
to citizenship. And the biggest criticism that people are giving it is that for someone who keeps saying that they want to keep these criminals out of the United States, the people who would most likely be able to afford them from Mexico would be people who work for the cartel and can afford $5 million for a green card. So it seems as though the United States is kind of just becoming money hungry. Becoming, or always was, actually, my fault.
Just not shy about it now.
Yeah, just not shy about it. I don't know. I also just think it's kind of like, I thought it was a funny thing. I did see the news, I guess, speaking on weed, when I was high, and I thought it was like the craziest, most ridiculous shit ever. I was like, a gold card? It just feels like we're living in a fucking South Park episode. You know what I mean? Like, it feels ridiculous.
People kept saying it's like he's making America like a Costco now.
A membership.
Yeah, because you know how you have your memberships for Costco.
Yeah.
I didn't, when I saw the, I guess, news announcement, I thought it was fake.
Yeah.
I was like,
Me too.
No way that that's real.
Right?
I was
Yeah.
like, that's AI. No way. No way he actually said that. But then I kept seeing reoccurring like posts about it, and I was like, damn, it is real.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just.
Yeah. It sounds like one of
It's-
those headlines that's like fake, like Rap TV posted.
Yeah,
that.
it's just so like, I don't know, like I'm so
Silly?
Yeah, but it's also like so sad that it's like he's like making it seem like it's just an impossible thing now for people, you know? And it's like so sad because, you know, people want to leave their areas sometimes and for other reasons, whatever those reasons are, you know? And I think placing that on people is just being like, it's like a haha, like he's making fun of you. Like, you're never going to afford this. You really think you're going to come here? Like, that's ridiculous. And I'm making it this amount of money so that I know that you're never going to come here.
Yeah. That like, I agree. I feel like for me, it just makes me sad that there's so much, I don't know. It's just like, there's so much discrimination against people who are hard workers, who care about families, who are just everyday people. And to me, it just feels like discrimination against people who are below a certain tax bracket. You know, to me, it's like there's people who do want to come here and like start a life or whatever, for whatever reason. And I think to make it $5 million to do that, my God, dude, where's your humanity? I don't know. That's what I always think of. Where's like the humanity? Like, do you really, how can you set a price on something like that? You get what I mean?
Yeah.
No, yeah, 100%. I also think that it kind of shows the favoritism towards like the rich.
Yeah.
Like, damn, rich people could just do whatever the fuck they want then.
Yeah.
They could literally buy citizenship now. Like, because I think it's funny because all the people who were like Trump supporters and supporting him were like, oh, it's because he's for us. He's for like the poor or the average American trying to just make a living here in the United States. But he's clearly showing that he's more allied with rich people and he's more of their partner. Like, how can you be a fucking Trump supporter and think that this guy's ever going to advocate for you who just is working like a regular job at fucking like Food for Less or a blue collar job at like the local mechanic place? Like, how can you ever really think that guy's going to be your ally? And, like, but yet you see so many people who would fucking ride his dick until the sun rises, you know? Like, it's fucking insane, bro.
Yeah. Nah, yeah. I just feel for people who are, like, who just aren't wealthy.
Yeah.
Like, who don't have a lot, you know? And I just mean anybody like that, you know? There's people who are starving, who are houseless, who are, you know, struggling to pay their bills and stuff like that. And just makes me sad. I wish people would help them more. You know, like I think those people deserve help, and I don't know. I think it's unfortunate. You know what I mean? Like to kind of not even. I don't know. Like it's. I guess for me, it's like, to me, helping people feels like such a like innate thing. Like, how can anybody not want to just help people? You know what I mean? So when you hear stuff like this, where it's showing favoritism or basically discrimination, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost impossible to fathom that people can just be that way. You get what I mean? I don't know.
No, I get what you mean. Yeah, Angelie, you have anything? Any thoughts? It's okay if you don't.
I just think it's a lack of empathy
Oh, for sure.
that everybody really holds. I mean, at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but it's like, it reminds me of like, I think it was last year, or was it 2023, where there was I forgot her name, but she's like a famous TikTok star. And she did like this video of her, I don't know what event she was at, but she said, let them eat cake.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She was at the Met Gala.
Mm-hmm. I just forgot her name. And then it just makes me feel so sad how that that there's just so many people that just want to make living here a better place, but yet they're not guaranteed those resources at all. And I mean, I understand kicking out people that are actual criminals, but at the same time, it's just innocent families that are just
Paying the
apart.
Yeah.
Real. But yeah, that's basically wanted to bring up. I thought it was interesting enough to bring up on the pod, because I also think calling it a gold card, that in of itself, and then like, did you see he like held it up? And it was like an actual gold card
Kind of
instead of green card, gold card.
I'm forgetting.
It just sounds like
the Willy Wonka ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory vibes.
I was like, really, like a gold card? I'm just like,
what? How silly this country is unserious.
No, you're right. It does
I
sound
think
silly.
it's more on, I don't think it's just focused on like Mexicans or just Latinos.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that everybody around humanity doesn't want to help out a race.
Yeah.
Because if it was Black Lives Matter, I'm pretty sure Latinos would step up. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that kind of look at Mexicans and just think to themselves like, oh, well, they're fine. I mean, either ways, like they'll get a job. They'll find some jale somewhere else. But it's like, you don't know anybody else's way of living. And that's the thing that's really messed up, is that just by taking away that resource for them to make a change, it's really not going to benefit them in the long run.
Definitely, yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know. I think you're right. I just don't understand the lack of empathy, you know, that people can walk around with, you know? Like immigrants pay taxes, man. Like when you buy gas, there's a gas tax. When you buy anything, there's a sales tax. When you have a home, there's property taxes, you know? Like people pay taxes. You know, they benefit our society. You know what I mean? It's just discrimination and lack of empathy. Like, how can you, I don't know, how can you not stand up for your fellow man? Like, you know, I like any race, any creed, any color, you know, I don't understand that. Like, I don't think you have to, like, I think you said it last week or the week before. I don't think you have to be part of a community to show solidarity with that community. You know what I mean? I do wish people would step up more for our community and other communities, because it's like you said, it's basic empathy.
It's just standing up for one another. And when I saw that Instagram reel that they had like a description, and I'm pretty sure you guys saw it. It was pretty popular. It was the Bug's Life monologue.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Oh yeah.
And it was like people in the comments are like, well, fuck the Democrats, fuck the Republicans. I'm like, bro, do you know it's us against them though?
Yeah.
It's not us versus each other. Like that's the reason why everything's all messed up, everything's all corrupt, and it's just not working out, because it's always a competition with everybody. Like you say earlier about races, when it was Mexicans and Salvis, it's always going to be like that when it comes down to, oh, we have better this, we have better this, or we have better this. It's not about who's more, I guess. I don't know. It just makes me mad talking about this topic, because it's just humanity.
Yeah.
And it's lack of empathy, and that's really what it is. And as much as people want to go around it and say that it's the government, it's taxes, it's this, it's not that. It's just people caring. That's literally what this world needs right now.
Yeah.
And we don't have that, sadly.
I was gonna ask, I guess kind of relating back to I guess kind of your earlier story about like, your humble beginnings, right? I feel like when I see a lot of people who start from humble beginnings and like work their way out of it or into a better place, they kind of look back on people who are in humble beginnings and be like, well, I made it out. Like, you pick yourself up by your bootstraps. But I don't get that from you at all. In fact, I think you're the opposite. That's like a very, I guess, interesting. I guess to me, very interesting that, like I said earlier, you're very optimistic and you do want to help other people and show empathy to other people. I just find that interesting, like, because I feel like a lot of people don't do that. Like we talked about it before when we say sometimes it's hard to believe that other Latinos can be pro-Trump or or anti-immigrant. It's like, how? You're in the same spot. Like, where does that come from? So I guess and my question to you is just like, I don't know. I guess I don't even know what the question is that I'm trying to ask. I'm just more like,
whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. More like a statement.
Yeah,
no, you're
right.
good. You're good.
Yeah.
No, I just feel like when it comes down to, how can I say it? I think when I don't remember. I think it was like AP government.
Yeah.
And we were talking about civil rights. We were talking about so many things. And mainly, I remember there was a video of Tupac, right? And he was mentioning how there's a bunch of people that have billions and billions of dollars, but not even caring to spend at least a little bit of money, like to the nearest donation center or charity event. But it's true though, because everything that all of these celebrities have or these influencers have, it doesn't, how can I say it? It's all temporary. And the way that you can pass by, like, I live in South Central, and even though I will have, like, let's say $5 on me, and there's a person that always, I don't know if you guys experience the window cleaners at the stoplights, and even though I'm like, no, and I'm like, damn, I feel bad, though, because, like, they're hustling, but, like, I know I'm not, how can I say this, I'm not obligated to give money, but I feel bad if I didn't. And even if it was, like, $2, you don't know, like, you don't know what hustle they're doing, because it's, like, if you're that down bad, like, why wouldn't you help them if you know that exact feeling?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, I can't see unfortunate people and not help them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or, like, even the kindest act of people that I see, it's like, I don't tell this to people, but if you're going to do something nice, don't film it. Like, that shit gives me an ick. And as much as it does, I think I can say, like, I think I was, let's say, middle school. I sucked at counting coins, right? And when it came down to me going to the nearest fast food joint, there was an older man, and he looked homeless. And he was trying to count all the coins in his cup to afford a meal. I'm middle school. My grandma told me to go with the $20 bill. Go get yourself something from the burger joint. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I mean, I could probably split it with him. I don't know how to, I'm not going to count those coins. I don't know how to count coins. And then I look at the man and I'm like, do you want anything? And I'm like, how old? Like 13, 12? And he's like, okay, thank you. And then he gives me his coins and I'm like, no, like, you're good. Like, just take it. But it's like, am I going to, like, film it to make sure that it's, like, needed that validation from everybody else? Like, oh, my God, she's a good person. Like, no, be a good person because you are, not because you're reaping the benefits of them.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
No, I agree.
No, for sure. I think also even just acknowledging people. Like, I always feel bad for people who are struggling. Like, of course, right? And I understand some people genuinely don't have anything to give, and that's fine. You know, it's fine. But I do also feel like you can at least acknowledge people, man. Like, I feel so terrible when, like, you know, you're on the freeway, you're walking past, and there's a houseless person who's just kindly asking, hey, do you have any spare change? And people just won't even say anything. They'll just, you know, I don't know.
Or just have, like, the window up and just.
Just, like, look the other way. And to me, it's like, bro, like, I understand, like, you could just say no or something, but I feel like it's got to feel so demoralizing and dehumanizing to not even be acknowledged. You know, like, I don't know. That's something that
I mean, like, because, like, if you're not gonna give money, at least have the balls and the courage to look at them and acknowledge them as an actual person.
As a
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's just for me. What I always think, because like, I remember like, because I've seen people like run away. Like,
Yeah.
I was in a parking lot once, and this guy was outside a restaurant, and he asked people, he was asking people for money, and these people just like ran away, and I was like, come on, man, like, I don't know,
As if they were monsters.
I just always
Were they like young kids?
no, they were like adults. They're like maybe a little older than we are.
Shame on them.
Yeah, well, that's something to me that I'm always like, bro, come on, like, you don't gotta run away, like, just talk to the poor guy, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen a lot of documentaries that like usually center around following just like homeless people, and they're self-aware, and that's one of the things that really bugs them is that like being on the street, people ignore you and want to look away, and it's as if you're invisible, and like it hurts, bro. It hurts. It's like the most humanizing thing you could do, because not only are you already in a super shitty situation, now people don't even acknowledge you as if you're subhuman.
And that's why I'm like, I agree with. I think that's part of where the lack of empathy comes with. I feel like if you talk to people, you'd be like, oh, well, this is just a normal guy, you know. But yeah, it is what it is.
Sorry, she's trying to get in that window real quick.
Mama, there's a girl behind
Go ahead. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Street cats. But yeah, that was my topic. Really good take, guys.
Yeah.
I really like that one.
Yeah.
Julie or Brandon, any of you guys have something?
Yeah, I did have something, and it's kind of like a continuation of something we talked about 2 weeks ago, maybe last week, I don't remember. And basically, like the comments that were coming out of it. Usually, like we talked about.
Comments?
What do you mean?
Do you mean like the comment section?
Yeah, the comment section on Instagram primarily. And you know,
it's always Instagram, bro. It has to be Instagram.
I don't really pay attention to comments. I don't really acknowledge them because, you know, I know that a lot of people speak on ignorance and stuff like that. But this one was really bugging me, not because it was a personal like attack. It was just more like I just don't vibe with what people are saying, you know what I mean? And what we talked about a few weeks ago was how we were talking about the protests and how people were saying that the protests make the Mexican community look bad and this and that. And you made the point that was like, how can you look at one person in a community and say the entire community is like that? That's literally racism, right? Yeah. And the comments on that were all people talking about the police. They were saying like, oh, if this logic is true, then why don't you apply it to the police? Like, one bad cop doesn't mean all cops are bad. And there was so many people saying that. And it was just...
But it's not the same, bro. Like, people, you're born into a race. Nobody's born a fucking cop. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, I wanted you to say that. And that was what was bugging me, because I was like, man, like, how can you say that? Like, how can you... Because for one, you're trying to make like a simple thing out of a very nuanced conversation. Not everything is black and white. The world exists in color. You know what I mean? And I just hated that, because everybody was like, you guys think
they thought they got me?
Yeah, I was like, and I don't ever really respond because I don't want to give them the engagement that they want. But I was just like, bro, shut up. Like, you have no idea what you're talking
annoying
about.
Ass.
Yeah, like annoying. Like they're being like, you guys think you're so smart. Why don't you apply this to the police? If one bad cop, one bad out. I was like, oh, bro. I don't know. I don't know if you guys ever do this to make yourself feel better. Sometimes I'll click on their profile and I'll be like, oh, it makes sense why you're like that. You know what I mean?
The way they look.
Yeah.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, because who was it?
Like,
I
think it was Danny. She was like, we had a guest, Danny, and she's like, whenever somebody hates on me, I look at them, and never has it been somebody who's prettier than me, more money than me, and smarter than me, I think she said. I don't remember.
Yeah, something like that. But I was also like, another thing that I was also like sad about, which I mean we talked about a little bit, was how many people had like Latinx like surnames. Like a lot of them were Gutierrez or Gomez or Hernandez, and I was like, also like what we just spoke on, like, bro, like you do know the police like history with our community, so how are you the ones being like, nah, like the police are ride or die for us? I'm like, bro, come on now. So I guess in that like revelation of reading all those comments and stuff, I wanted to talk about like an instance that I had learned about recently about something that the police had done regarding activists. So have you guys ever heard of the Philadelphia MOVE attack? So MOVE was like an activist organization. It was a black activist, an African American organization, I should say. It was a political and religious group in Philadelphia. They kind of believed in communal living, so they lived in a communal space, and they were basically for black liberation. They were kind of like a religious group, from what my understanding, and they were about like nature and stuff like that. A lot of similar to a lot of activist groups. So they would have a lot of confrontations with the police, like most activist groups do. And in May 13th of 1985, the Philadelphia Police Department actually dropped a bomb on their compound. It was a military-grade bomb. They dropped it from a helicopter. You can see footage of it. And basically within 90 minutes, 500 cops fired 10,000 rounds of ammunition into that building, along with the bomb. The bomb, of course, started fires. It killed 11 people, including 5 kids. It burned, I think, as far as I have, 65 homes, which was entirely a black neighborhood, by the way, the fire that ensued. And there was only one adult survivor from that. Her name was Ramona Africa. And when I was learning about this, none of the police, by the way, got prosecuted, were denounced. Nothing happened to them. The only person to be prosecuted was the lone survivor. She went to prison for 7 years after they dropped a bomb on her home, killed her family, killed 5 kids, and burned down the community. And that, I understand, like, of course, that's a disturbing incident, right? Yeah. But that's the kind of stuff that when I hear people say, like, oh, the police, I'm like, do you know about these kinds of incidents? You know, do you know about these kinds of incidents that the system protects? Because, like, nobody went to jail. Nobody was prosecuted. Nobody was reprimanded. That's the problem with the police, is that there's a system that enables this. You know what I mean? Like you were saying, nobody's born a cop. Nobody's born a cop. People are born with you're born genetically like the culture that you are, but you're not born a cop. Yeah. And what people have issues with the police is the system that's constantly enabling this. Like, what kind of protection system okays a bomb to be dropped on kids? Yeah. Like, that's insane to me. Like, when I heard about the bomb, I was like, are you serious? They dropped a bomb and nothing ever happened to them. It was a military-grade bomb. It was C4. Dropped it from a helicopter like it was a movie. And there's even video, like, archive footage of the police laughing, being like, I bet they'll never say fuck the police again. You know, shit like that. And I think that kind of stuff is disturbing. And like I said, I know it's like a disturbing incident, but that's why when I read those comments of people being like, how can you liken people trying to earn their rights to this kind of system? Do you get what I mean?
Like, how's it even the same?
Yeah, like, that's why I'm like, you're trying to turn something so nuanced and detailed into like, well, there's no such thing. One bad apple doesn't ruin the batch. I'm like, bro, it's the system. Like, it's the people that produce this. You know what I mean? But that was what I wanted to share a little bit, is incidents like that. You know, like, we hear about that all the time. Like we said, nothing ever happened to the police involved. It was just the lone survivor who got prosecuted. And I guess, like, another thing I wanted to add, like, in 2020, it was discovered that there was, I think, you can fact check me on this. I didn't have enough time to completely look into it, but I think there was remains and also artifacts from that incident that were put in museums and, like, kept, and the survivors and the people involved were never told about it. And so in 2020, they found out about it, and they were obviously furious. Yeah. Like, how can you do all this, not prosecute it, and then put it in a museum being like, whoopsie, you know, and profit off of it? You know, that's a whole nother thing. But that's what I wanted to address, because at this point, seeing all those comments, I was like, I don't know. I just wanted to address it. You get what I mean?
Yeah. I get you.
Yeah. I just feel like I guess it goes into, like, people having, you know, that empathy again, and, like, that sympathy for people, where it's like, how have you not seen the history within, you know, the police department in any place? Like, you're talking about in what, Philadelphia? Yeah. But you've heard so much history with LAPD, especially with the Black and brown community. Yeah. And how is it that you are part of those, you know, communities, and you can defend this whole group saying that no, it's just one bad apple.
Yeah.
But it's like the whole entire system is what kind of creates all of them, and what kind of never gets justice for the actual people.
For sure.
And I think I don't know. I think that's the one thing that I just never understood, how people can, I guess, defend that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I get you. I mean, I guess, and stick with me because this is a long analogy.
Yeah.
Using the bad apple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one bad apple doesn't ruin the whole batch, but it's more like cops have existed for generations, and the system has always awarded people who abuse their power. So if you want to use the apple as an example, you're right, it's not one bad apple ruins the whole batch, but the factory that the apple comes from in and of itself is a bad factory that you don't have to get employed at. You see, it's a bit of a reach.
Yeah.
But you guys get what I'm saying, right?
I get what you mean, for sure. But like I said, I just wanted to bring it up because I don't know, that was one of the times where the comments actually got a reaction out of me, because I was like, come on, man, how can you say that?
Yeah.
Like, how can you see that kind of behavior? Like, dude, a bomb? They dropped a bomb on a community in Philadelphia? This isn't... for some reason, I know some people are desensitized to bombs being dropped in not USA.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you should be. But, like, this is the United States. You know, everybody's always talking about, oh, the United States is so, like, whatever. But they dropped in a community, let it burn down, 65 homes. It killed 11 people, you know, God rest their souls, and children as well. And you can watch the interviews. They're so heartbreaking because the communities are like, if this was a white neighborhood, this fire would have been put out immediately. They would have never fired those rounds. And that's true.
Yeah.
It would have never happened. You know what I mean? And then the cops are laughing about it, being like, that'll teach them to stick up to the police. And how is that even approved? How do they... What the fuck does a cop police department need with bombs, by the way? Weird.
That's
but
crazy.
that's why I wanted to address it, because like I don't think
good shit, dude.
I don't like when people liken our community to something like that. Like, don't liken immigrants or protesters who are fighting for rights and respect to people who are doing that. Like, that's what, for me, was what I wanted to come out and at least address or talk about. But yeah,
because like I also think the root of the problem is for sure lack of empathy, but also more importantly, ignorance. Like, most people aren't even educated. Like, I'm not even gonna put myself in a high horse. Like, I didn't even know that. You know, and like when you're educated in stories like that, you can look at the full picture and be like, oh, actually, these two things aren't anything even similar. Yeah,
and the stuff people were talking about was, I don't know if you had heard about it, or you've probably seen the protests, right? The ones that were happening recently, because they were right on the freeway right there by you, right? And what we were talking about was they were, what was it, the flag?
Some people were saying that you shouldn't wave the Mexican flag at the protest.
And people were mad that we were like, what? And somebody also burned the American flag, which is, we educated people, is a long historical precedent of being a form of protest. You know, like just burning the American flag has been a sign of protest, you know. And we were saying, like, that doesn't make anybody look bad. That's just a sign of protest. You know, how can you be against a movement people are fighting for rights? They're fighting for their families, you know? So to take that, you know, the burning of a flag that isn't even, it's not human, it's a thing, and liken it to the police department, which is burning down homes, I think there's a big difference there. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well said, dude.
Yeah.
Really, I like that segment, dude.
Thank you.
Honestly, you've been killing it with these segments lately.
Thank you.
He keeps coming in every single week and giving us like new education.
Well, I didn't actually. I forgot to introduce it. It's like that's what the brief.
We have it.
I was about to say.
It's because I was like, what if I do a segment where it's like where it's so crazy it sounds like a conspiracy or something like
so
that.
You get
I bought the briefcase, but
like the secret CIA files.
But I think I also secretly just always wanted a briefcase.
And it's sick, bro.
Thank you,
it works. It works.
We're trying to have a little like jingle for him.
Yeah. I can't come up with it. Are you talented in music? Can you come up with a jingle right now?
No.
Fuck no.
You don't freestyle when you're small.
No, I usually
freestyle.
go based off on all my episodes, they're all related to like any like childhood TV shows, like any nostalgia TV shows. That's the only way I could get creative with it. But like my own little beat, I can't do that.
That's perfect though. What's a child show that you like?
I do like SpongeBob.
Oh, how does it?
Nah, don't try.
It's not gonna
Don't
work.
try.
No.
That's interesting. Yeah, why the childhood shows? Like, is there a reason that
Yeah.
you incorporate
What's that?
that, or is it just like a aesthetic that you like?
It's mainly inner child type of stuff that I like to bring people a lot of nostalgia, kind of.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of the times the reason why people are the way they are is because it's all childhood.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah,
where it
that's
stems
true.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask you a question about that.
Oh.
About your
Oh,
segment.
the segment. Yeah.
Why was she prosecuted?
She was prosecuted because they said she was resisting arrest and starting a riot, and it was so they said she was like resisting arrest and it was rioting because the MOVE activists they had like I said, a long standing history with the police, but like most activist what would you call them, organizations? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. So she got 7 years in prison. She does
Damn.
interviews. She does interviews about it. When she was the only one adult survivor that they pulled from the rubble, and she had I apologize for forgetting, but I forget, is it 2nd-degree burns that are the worst ones?
I think
She-
so.
You can see in the video she has horrible
It-
burns, like on her right side. And when they took her to the hospital, she actually refused treatment for the burns, and they immediately took her for questioning, like right from the hospital. She was like, "I don't want any treatment," and they took her immediately and started questioning her, being like, "Why did you do that? Tell us about this, and that." And she got 7 years in prison. Isn't that crazy?
That's
Yeah,
wild.
bro.
She basically the person who suffered from a bomb was the one put in jail, not the people who fired 50,000 rounds.
Not the people who actually threw the
Not the
bomb.
people who threw the bomb or shot 50,000 rounds at a family and kids.
Mm.
The person who was receiving that went to prison.
That's crazy.
Never once did they denounce the police. It wasn't until way later that I think a jury had said, yeah, they might have overstepped. That's it.
Damn.
Might have been excessive force.
Oh, but-
maybe. That's
But
what they
according to
said.
the comment section, that's just a few bad apples. bro.
yeah, not the entire police department. Like, the fuck?
The system of
Yeah.
policing.
But, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The fact that, you did say ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And the fact that a lot of people do not want to learn or feel too embarrassed to even ask questions. Like right now,
yeah.
I had to ask a question because it's like, I'm not going to act like I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
But as well as the police department, look at our government.
yeah.
That's really sending bombs to other places.
yeah.
Mm.
But it's the way that sadly humanity is right now. And
Yeah.
the way that it was Rodney King too. I
Yeah.
remember what happened. My dad was telling me the story. George Floyd as well. But I don't know what to say. I feel like the police has not a bad, I don't know.
No,
Just has a bad
I mean,
reputation.
Has a
especially-
bad reputation
yeah.
for sure, because it's
yeah.
like you can't really say like, okay, I've met good cops and now I meet bad cops.
Yeah.
But a distinctive memory I have is when I think I was like 7 years old and I was in passenger seat, and I'm pretty sure if you were to see a Mexican bald head guy, you would think it's a cholo, right? That's why they stopped me and my dad, and they were like suspecting that he was kidnapping me. And they were about to say, like, get out of the car. Like, we need to know if this is your daughter or not. And then I just didn't even know what to say because I was like, wait, why are you guys, like, bugging him so hard? You know, I was confused. But obviously when we got back to the house, he was explaining it to me that there's racism out
Yeah,
here.
they racial profiled his ass.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's, I don't know. I feel like cops are just not it, though.
Yeah.
At least some. But
I mean, especially, we live in Los Angeles, and the LAPD has a long history of abusing minorities and people of color here in the city. My brother, the story that I always tell about him, I have an older brother, and one time he was walking home from school, and it was like pretty rare because my parents didn't really like give him that freedom, but he had this freedom of walking home from school. And then this cop pulls up to him and his friends, and he's like, "Oh, where are you guys going?" I guess thinking that they were up to some trouble. And my family used to live on Gay Street, like that was actually the name of our street. And so the cop asked him, "Where do you live?" And he says, "Gay Street." And the cop thinks he's making a joke, and so he's like, he puts him in his cruiser and he takes him to apparently where he's like, "Oh, you live on Gay Street? Then show me." And then he did. Unfortunately, my mom took it out on my brother because obviously to be taken home in a police cruiser. is bad, but it just shows you like an overreach of power and harassment when literally just a couple of kids were
you
going
guys
home.
are kids.
Yeah.
No, for sure. That's why I think we always say, like, it's the system. Like, for me to hear that the police department, like, first of all, approved that was appropriate to drop a bomb on a community is insane to me. Like, I understand, like, maybe there's a few cops in that system who are objectively good people, right? But just the system itself being okay with and comfortable with that is alarming to me. And I'm always so upset that the systems never take any accountability. They don't ever prosecute the bad cops. They never want to say, like, oh, like, maybe he was a bad dude. Like, do you remember who was it? It was the cop that recently killed that poor woman who was having a mental episode.
With the pot?
Yeah, and
I forgot her name, but I remember.
Yeah, and remember the cop had been moved like 6 different precincts because he had a problem of overstepping power. You know what I mean? What was it? It was like 3 or 4. Like he had been moved. He had constant complaints of overstepping power, of inciting incidents. I forget the complete details, but that was a part of the case. And to me, it's like the system was protecting that guy and being like, nah, just move him. Instead of being like, hey, this guy is a bad cop. Like, let's get him out of this fucking, like, he's not qualified to be a police officer. Instead, they protected him, and they were like, no, like, just move him. And look what happened. A woman lost her life. You know what I mean? So that's where my issue always tends to stand, you know, with these kinds of things. Like the fact that she was imprisoned is insane to me. Yeah. The fact that none of those police officers, it was 500 armed. What the fuck do you need?
I feel like sometimes police officers do not have, like, the right qualifications to even be a cop. Yeah. Because I think, I forgot his name, but I think it was a special needs child that was having an episode, and the cop, I don't know if you guys seen it or not.
I think I know where you're talking about.
I don't know.
Jumped from
he wouldn't put down, I think he had like it wasn't a weapon that he had, but like he kept coming towards the cop, and I don't know if he shot him, but I think he did. But it's the way that cops do not take into consideration that there's people that struggle with mental health. Yeah. There's ways to de-escalate a situation. But
I think,
when do you ever see that?
I don't know if it was all I forget which precinct. I think it was the one that I'm talking about with the cop that we just talked about. Was they said we're not even going to respond to mental, or what's the proper term, psychotic episodes, that they don't respond to that anymore. That I think it goes to the fire department, which should have been, I think, the appropriate response, either with this fire department or paramedics. I feel like sending an armed person to somebody who's just troubled is already insane. That's the thought process.
It's a recipe for
like disaster. Why would you send a guy with a gun to somebody who, like, so I completely agree that I think some of these people are just unqualified to be handling those situations.
And it was a mom. I remember her interview, and she was crying, and she was saying that I wish cops had more training in that area, because I mean, I worked with I used to be a behavior technician. Yeah. And there's certain I guess you could say, like, certain spectrums that they're at. Yeah. And obviously sometimes they don't know if they're coming off as dangerous to the other person or not. Like, they're unaware of it. Yeah. And it's just sad. It's just sad.
Yeah. I won't say too much because I don't want to overstep the person's comfortability on camera, but I know and I'm familiar with people who suffer from manic episodes, right? And they tell you, if you know people like that who struggle with that, is when you're in a manic episode, there isn't really reasoning with them about what's going on. You can't, like, I don't, like, again, I don't want to, like, overstep or presume certain things, but the incident that I was being explained to was, you know, this person was believing that people were out to get them. Like, there's people like, they're going to come get me. They're going to come get me. And you can't convince them that that isn't the case. You also shouldn't, you know, be like, you can't feed into them. But you also can't, like, they're just not there at the moment. You know what I mean? Like you said, there's a certain spectrum that people are on. And, you know, that takes a lot of empathy and, like, understanding, because these people aren't trying to be that way. They can't control it. They
And
can't,
patience.
like, you can't just tell people like snap out of it. Like what
Yeah.
what a ignorant and easy thing to say. These people don't have control at the moment. You know what I mean? But they're kind, loving, understanding people. It's just at the moment they're struggling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why I think when you send police to those situations and these people are saying, oh, there's people who are coming to get me. Because the woman who called, I'm so sorry that I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but she called for help.
Yeah,
she was
she did.
struggling. She had a history of struggling, you know, and that's what's unfortunate. You know what I mean?
I just feel like with those things, I never understood why their first instinct is to just pull out their gun
And
when
escalate.
it's like
Yeah.
where it's like it's a woman and you're this big tall man that can probably, like, if she were to come at you, you could probably defend yourself just with your hands and your arms. And especially when it's like children, it's like it's a whole kid. How is it that you're relying, just like, what's in your thought process that you think that's like the best way to do it for yourself?
I also
you know?
feel like the police act like they don't have like 6 things that are not non-lethal on them. They have pepper spray, they have tasers, they have handcuffs, and they have batons.
Yeah.
I don't think they should use any of those really on a person with who's struggling. But how is that not first? How is the gun first?
Yeah.
Like, how is the lethal force first on somebody who's struggling? But I digress.
Yeah.
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 I was also gonna add. This is also something I learned. Did you guys know that police have a long history of killing dogs and pets?
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're one of the number one reasons why dogs die. is
Oh,
because-
like they're the cause of death?
yeah, for dogs, because a lot of times the dog will be in the yard and cops probably not even supposed to be there anyway. The dog will come up to them and they'll just shoot it. Unfortunately, there's a recent one. Don't watch it because it's disturbing. It's a little dog, the white ones, I think Maltese or something like that.
I think I know which one you're
Yeah,
talking about.
and he comes up to the cop because it's a dog. You're in his yard.
Yeah.
And the cop shoots it. And it's a tiny dog. The dog isn't aggressive. It's just like, what's up, you know? And he's like, oh, well, I didn't know. Like, it's for my safety. You know
What
what
the
I mean?
fuck?
And what sucks about that is, of course, what I learned is you can't really do anything because when a dog is killed, it counts as destruction of property. It's not like
Damn.
it's not like I forget what people try to get it as. I'm sorry, but
It's like life, obviously.
yeah,
Something like
but they, because dogs are considered property, it's a way less
offense.
Yeah, which I also think is strange. Like, why are these people so like thirsty for killing? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. But again, I digress.
Trigger happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
Crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, I appreciate at least you bringing the segment.
Knowledge.
Is that do you have a closing theme song segment?
No, I was just gonna say, like, support our communities, man. Like, these people are fighting for rights, dude. People just want rights, and there's nothing wrong with that, you know.
Co-sign.
Civil disobedience is not a crime. It's a right, you know. People fight for. Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you for
Nice
listening.
and well said. Yeah, but to go ahead and wrap up this episode, because we've been yapping for a while. I know you have a big audience, and I know a lot of people watch you and are curious about you. If there's anything right now that you feel like you get questioned a lot or you want to clear up, right now is the time to do it. Is there anything that you would like to say before we go ahead and close out the show?
I will start practicing my Spanish a lot more. And that's usually it. That's it.
That's it. All right, that's perfect. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Super
guys.
appreciative. Super good episode.
Yeah, definitely. Before we send you off, I just want to say, like, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
We really are big fans of your content. We've been watching you for a very long time.
I'm telling you, the show was built on us smoking together.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that I found your story to be very profound and very inspiring. I think you're a very brave, very kind, and very optimistic person, and I think the world needs more of that. So thank you for being the way that you are, and thank you for sharing that on our podcast. We feel really honored to for you to trust us with that story.
Yeah.
You know, so thank you so much. I don't know if Julie,
thank
you have
you.
anything.
No, yeah. Just again wanted to show appreciation for you being on our show. It's been really great having you here. And again, so inspiring to me as a woman. And you know, continue sharing out stories about everything and perspectives.
Yeah.
And I always love that.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that with us and being vulnerable with us as well.
And then me as a stoner, thank you for the representation. I think you're a very good representation. I have been watching your videos for a while, and I think that that's kind of like always the niche vibe that I felt like content creation was missing. with somebody who just gets high and just starts spitting some real shit. And because that's kind of, I'm telling you, that was kind of the genesis of the show.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you for coming on the show and letting us see you in real life.
Yeah, and before we send everybody off for the final time, we just got to give a shout out to our patrons. Shout out to Yoel, Jada Chicano, Eli Quintero, I'm Potato Tots, Stephen Carvajal, Carla Corazon, El Verdugo de Pasadena, and Altadena will rebuild.
And it will.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much to everybody for your support. Again, thank you so much to Angelie. We really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Go ahead and follow her. All of her
links will be in the description.
And her social media will be linked in the description. She really, really is a great content creator. We think you guys should check her out. We really hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.